February 4th, 2018, Minneapolis. The final seconds tick away as confetti cannons explode over US Bank Stadium. The Philadelphia Eagles have just defeated the New England Patriots 41-33, winning their first Super Bowl championship in franchise history. On the field, amid the chaos of celebration, stands a 66-year-old man in Eagles gear, tears streaming down his face. His name is Jeffrey Lurie, and he just turned $185 million into $6.5 billion. But that's not the whole story. 24 years earlier, the same man walked into the most hostile press conference in Philadelphia sports history. Fans held signs reading, "Rich kids folly," and "We want winners, not heirs." The media openly mocked him as someone born into money with no football knowledge, playing with a broken franchise like it was a trust fund toy. If he failed, he wouldn't just lose money. He'd become the man who wasted a legacy, embarrassed a city, and proved all the skeptics right. But if he succeeded, he'd pull off one of the greatest sports investment stories ever told. This is that story. Before we dive into this incredible journey from ridicule to redemption, if you enjoy stories like this where we uncover the economic events and business decisions that shaped our world while most people were sleeping, please like this video and subscribe to the Sleeping Economist channel. Chapter 1. Born into everything, pressured to prove nothing. Jeffrey Robert Lurie was born on September 8, 1951 in Boston, Massachusetts, into a family where money wasn't a concern. It was a fact of life. His grandfather, Philip Smith, had founded General Cinema Corporation, one of the first major drive-in movie theater chains in the United States. By the mid-20th century, General Cinema wasn't just showing movies, it was printing money. Shopping mall multiplexes, suburban expansion, the golden age of American cinema. Smith had positioned his company perfectly at the intersection of entertainment and real estate. When Philip Smith died, Jeffrey Lurie inherited over $200 million. He was 33 years old, wealthy beyond comprehension, with no pressure to work, no pressure to prove anything, no pressure to build an empire. Most heirs in his position would have disappeared into comfortable obscurity. Yachts, charity galas, museum boards, the quiet, respectable life of inherited wealth. But Jeffrey Lurie wasn't wired that way. He'd earned a bachelor's degree from Clark University, a master's in psychology from Boston University, and a doctorate in social policy from Brandeis University. His doctoral thesis examined the depiction of women in Hollywood films. For 3 years, he taught social policy at Boston University. He wasn't a football jock. He wasn't a business shark. He was an intellectual, thoughtful, and introspective. His family expected him to join General Cinema Corporation, maybe oversee film production deals, maintain the family legacy quietly. Instead, Lurie moved to Los Angeles and became a film producer. He founded Chestnut Hill Productions, putting his own money into independent films. Some succeeded, most didn't, but he was learning something crucial that most heirs never discover: how to evaluate talent, how to build systems, how to make decisions when the outcome is uncertain. In Hollywood, you don't win by playing it safe. You win by finding the right people, giving them resources, and getting out of their way. By 1994, Jeffrey Lurie had been looking for his next big move. He tried to buy the New England Patriots but lost the bidding war to Robert Kraft. That rejection stung, but it didn't stop him. Then, in early 1994, news broke that the Philadelphia Eagles were for sale. Norman Brahman, the owner since 1985, was selling the team. Brahman had been notoriously cheap, cutting costs everywhere, alienating fans, and turning one of the NFL's storied franchises into a punchline. The Eagles had just finished a 7-9 season under head coach Rich Kotite, collapsing from a 7-2 start. Fans were furious. The city was starving for change. Jeffrey Lurie saw an opportunity, but it would cost him nearly everything he had. Chapter 2. The most hostile welcome in sports history. On April 6, 1994, the announcement became official. Jeffrey Lurie had purchased the Philadelphia Eagles for $185 million, at the time the highest price ever paid for an NFL franchise. To finance the deal, Lurie used his General Cinema stock, his family trust, and a massive bank loan. It wasn't play money. It was almost everything he had. If this investment failed, Jeffrey Lurie would lose his fortune and his reputation. Philadelphia fans didn't greet him with open arms, they greeted him with rage. At his first press conference as owner, protesters gathered outside holding signs that read, "Rich Kids Folly, Radio's Pin, and we want winners, not heirs." Inside the press room, reporters grilled him with hostile questions. One journalist asked point blank if he was just a spoiled rich kid playing with a football team. Another demanded to know what qualified him, a Hollywood film producer, to run an NFL franchise. The Philadelphia media, legendary for their brutality, smelled blood in the water. This wasn't just skepticism, this was open contempt. Why? Because Philadelphia sports fans had been burned before. They'd watched owner after owner treat their teams like side projects, cutting corners, prioritizing profits over winning. Norman Brayman, the previous owner, had become infamous for his penny-pinching ways. He refused to invest in players, coaches, or facilities. The Eagles made the playoffs in 1990 and 1992 under coach Buddy Ryan, but Brahman's unwillingness to spend turned promise into stagnation. When Lurie arrived, fans saw another rich outsider, another disappointment waiting to happen. And then there was the football knowledge problem. Jeffrey Lurie had a doctorate in social policy, not offensive schemes. He'd never played football beyond high school. He didn't talk like a coach, he didn't act like a traditional owner. He talked about organizational culture, long-term thinking, and finding the right leadership. To the fans and media, it sounded like corporate jargon, empty promises from someone who didn't understand the game. Lurie's first decision as owner didn't help his case. He kept Rich Kotite as head coach for the 1994 season. Kotite was wildly unpopular, a holdover from the Brahman era who'd just blown a 7-2 start to finish 7-9. Fans wanted him gone immediately. But Lurie decided to give Kotite one season to prove himself, to evaluate the roster, to learn the organization from the inside. It was a measured, rational decision. It was also a disaster. The 1994 season was a catastrophe. The Eagles started 7-2 again, then collapsed again, finishing 7-9 for the second straight year. Kotite was done. Lurie fired him after the season, and now the pressure was on. Jeffrey Lurie had one chance to get this right. If he hired the wrong coach, his investment, his reputation, and his dream would be over before they'd even begun. Philadelphia was watching. The entire sports world was watching. And Jeffrey Lurie did something nobody expected. Chapter 3. Hiring the man nobody wanted. In January 1999, Jeffrey Lurie hired Andy Reid as the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. At the time, Reid was the offensive line coach and assistant head coach for the Green Bay Packers. He'd never been a head coach before. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't popular, he wasn't a big name. In fact, most Eagles fans had never heard of him. The reaction in Philadelphia was brutal. Sports radio exploded with anger. Callers demanded to know why Lurie had passed on more experienced candidates. Newspaper columns ripped the decision apart, calling Reid Andy who? And questioning whether Lurie had any idea what he was doing. Even within NFL circles, the hire was seen as a gamble. Andy Reid was known as a brilliant offensive mind, but he had no head coaching experience, no track record of running a team, and no star power to energize a fan base desperate for hope. But Jeffrey Lurie had done his homework. He didn't just interview Andy Reid, he studied him. He talked to people in Green Bay who'd worked with Reid, watched film of Reid's offensive schemes, and asked Reid tough questions about how he'd build a culture. What Lurie discovered was someone who thought like he did. Reid wasn't interested in shortcuts. He believed in discipline, systems, patience, and development. He believed in finding the right people, putting them in the right positions, and building something sustainable. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't what fans wanted to hear. But it was right. Reid's first move as head coach was to draft a quarterback in the first round of the 1999 NFL draft. His name was Donovan McNabb, a strong-armed, mobile quarterback from Syracuse University. Eagles fans at the draft in New York booed the pick mercilessly, chanting, "We want Ricky Williams! "We want Ricky Williams," referring to the star running back from Texas. It was one of the most infamous moments in draft history. The fans wanted a flashy running back. They got a quarterback nobody believed in. Reid didn't care. He knew McNabb was the foundation. The 1999 season was rough. The Eagles finished 5-11, McNabb struggled as a rookie, and critics sharpened their knives. But Reid stayed the course. He built an offensive line, developed young talent, and installed a culture of accountability. In 2000, the Eagles went 11-5 and made the playoffs for the first time in 4 years. In 2001, they went 11-5 again and made the NFC Championship game. In 2002, same record, same result. By 2003, the Eagles were one of the best teams in football. Then came 2004. The Eagles went 13-3 in the regular season, dominated the playoffs and reached Super Bowl 39 in Jacksonville, Florida, where they faced the New England Patriots. It was the franchise's first Super Bowl appearance since 1980. Philadelphia was electric. Jeffrey Lurie's gamble on Andy Reid had paid off, but on February 6, 2005, the Eagles lost to the Patriots 24-21. It hurt. It stung. But something had changed. The Eagles weren't a joke anymore. They were contenders, and Philadelphia finally believed. Chapter 4. The painful years between glory and greatness. After losing Super Bowl 39, the Eagles remained competitive under Andy Reid, but couldn't break through to win a championship. From 2005 to 2008, they made the playoffs 3 times, but never returned to the Super Bowl. Donovan McNabb's career wound down, injuries piled up, and the window seemed to be closing. In 2010, the Eagles hired a dynamic new offensive coordinator named Michael Vick, took over at quarterback, and the team surged to a 10-6 record. But they lost in the playoffs again. Then came the Chip Kelly era. In 2013, after 14 seasons and 130 wins, Jeffrey Lurie made the painful decision to fire Andy Reid. Reid's final season in 2012 had been a disaster. 4-12, his worst record ever. The city wanted change. Lurie hired Chip Kelly, an innovative college coach from the University of Oregon, known for his fast-paced offense. Kelly brought energy, new ideas, and a fresh approach. For 2 years, it worked. 10-6 in 2013, 10-6 in 2014. But Kelly's abrasive personality and controversial roster decisions alienated players. He traded away beloved stars like LeSean McCoy and Deshaun Jackson, chased free agents who didn't fit, and installed a culture that felt cold and transactional. By 2015, the Eagles were 7-9, and Kelly was fired mid-season. Lurie had swung and missed. The franchise was adrift again, and critics wondered if Jeffrey Lurie had lost his touch. In 2016, Lurie made another quiet, unsexy hire that nobody saw coming. He brought in Doug Peterson, Andy Reid's former quarterback coach and offensive coordinator in Kansas City. Peterson had been a backup quarterback for the Eagles under Reid in 1999, but there was a method to the madness. Doug Peterson understood Reid's system. He understood Philadelphia's culture, and he understood that winning wasn't about being the smartest guy in the room. It was about trust, preparation, and believing in your players. In Peterson's first season, the Eagles went 7-9. Not great, but there were signs of progress. Quarterback Carson Wentz, the second overall pick in the 2016 draft, showed flashes of brilliance. The offensive line was strong, the defense was improving. Then came 2017. Carson Wentz played like an MVP candidate. The Eagles stormed to an 11-2 record, and Philadelphia believed this was finally the year. But in week 14, disaster struck. Wentz tore his ACL, ending his season. Backup quarterback Nick Foles, a journeyman who'd nearly retired from football, took over. The Eagles limped into the playoffs as the number 1 seed, and nobody gave them a chance. Nobody except Jeffrey Lurie. Chapter 5. The night everything changed. Super Bowl. LII. February 4th, 2018. US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The Philadelphia Eagles, led by backup quarterback Nick Foles, faced the New England Patriots, led by the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. The Patriots were heavily favored. Brady had 5 Super Bowl rings. Bill Belichick was the greatest coach in NFL history. The Eagles were the underdogs with a backup quarterback and a rookie head coach. What happened next was magic. The Eagles came out aggressive, fearless, and relentless. Doug Peterson called one of the gutsiest games in Super Bowl history. On 4th and goal before halftime, instead of kicking a field goal, Peterson called a trick play where Nick Foles lined up as a receiver. The ball was snapped directly to running back Corey Clement, who pitched it to tight end Trey Burton, who threw a touchdown pass to Foles. The Philly Special. It became an instant legend, one of the most iconic plays in NFL history. The game turned into a shootout. Brady threw for 505 yards, a Super Bowl record, but Nick Foles matched him, throw for throw, drive for drive. With 2 minutes and 21 seconds left in the fourth quarter, Foles threw a 5-yard touchdown pass to tight end Zach Ertz, giving the Eagles a 38-33 lead. The defense held. Brady's final pass fell incomplete. The clock hit 0. The Philadelphia Eagles were Super Bowl champions. On the field, Jeffrey Lurie embraced Doug Peterson, tears streaming down his face. 24 years. 24 years of doubt, criticism, pressure, and second-guessing. He'd been called a rich kid playing with a football team. He'd been mocked for hiring Andy Reid. He'd been questioned for firing Andy Reid. He'd been ridiculed for hiring Doug Peterson. And now, holding the Lombardi trophy in his hands, all of it meant something. Philadelphia exploded. Over 1 million people lined Broad Street for the victory parade, the largest gathering in the city's history. But the financial story was just as remarkable. When Lurie bought the Eagles in 1994 for $185 million, critics called it an overpayment. By 2018, after winning the Super Bowl, Forbes valued the franchise at $2.8 billion. Today, in 2026, the Eagles are worth $8.3 billion, making them the 6th most valuable sports franchise in the world. Chapter 6. What Jeffrey Lurie teaches us about wealth, responsibility, and long-term thinking. Jeffrey Lurie's story teaches us something fundamental that most people who inherit wealth never learn. Money doesn't prove you deserve success, but how you use it does. Here's what makes Lurie different from most heirs. When he inherited over $200 million, he could have done what 90% of wealthy heirs do. Maintain the status quo, protect the principal, live comfortably, and never take a real risk. Instead, he bet almost everything on a failing football franchise in one of America's toughest sports cities. That's not reckless, that's conviction. But conviction alone doesn't win championships. What Lurie understood, and what separates successful owners from failures, is this: hire people smarter than you, give them resources, and trust the process. When Lurie hired Andy Reid in 1999, he didn't hire the flashiest candidate or the most famous name. He hired someone whose values aligned with his own. Reid believed in systems, discipline, and long-term player development. Lurie gave him 14 years to build something sustainable, even when fans screamed for his firing after every playoff loss. That's the second lesson. Patience beats panic. Most NFL owners fire coaches after 3 bad seasons. Lurie gave Reid 14 years, 130 wins, and 9 playoff appearances. Yes, Reid never won a Super Bowl in Philadelphia, but he built the foundation that made Doug Peterson's 2017 championship possible. When you invest in systems instead of quick fixes, you compound success over time. The third lesson is about contrarian thinking. When Lurie hired Doug Peterson in 2016, the fan base groaned. Another Andy Reid disciple? Another boring conservative hire? But Lurie knew something the critics didn't. Peterson understood the culture, respected the city, and believed in empowering his players. That trust paid off when Peterson made the gutsy call to go for it on 4th down in the Super Bowl, a decision that defined his legacy. Here's the financial lesson that applies far beyond football. Lurie didn't just buy a team and hope it appreciated. He invested in infrastructure, coaching, scouting, player development, and facilities. The Eagles built one of the best training complexes in the NFL, the NovaCare complex in South Philadelphia. They invested in analytics before it was trendy. They created a culture where players wanted to stay long-term. That's not luck, that's operational excellence compounding over decades. If stories like this, where we uncover the economic events that shaped our world while most people weren't paying attention, fascinate you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, because we're just getting started with these financial, educational mysteries.